and the other is feedback, a call. So this morning, Father Stephen and I are not in the greatest of voices. I qualified, he qualified in both, he's young. Well, unfortunately, I think he was cheering too much as a kid in the Junior Olympics. He lost his voice. But I'd like to thank Deacon John, who has served his parish for so many years. Today he was supposed to be at the St. Demetrius Church in Fort Lauderdale at the Metropolitan. But being that Father Stephen and I were not of good voice, he came to help us, and we thank you, John, for that and for the service with us in our
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Christ is risen.
Truly is risen.
Today is graduation day. All around the country, we have young students processing into auditoriums, marching across stages, shaking hands with presidents, and receiving their diplomas for their years of hard work and study. Well, today we actually have our Sunday school graduation as well. I want you all, thinking about school, I want you all to take a job back in grade 1. Think back to your days in school. Do you remember what it was like? Do you remember nervously, anxiously waiting for reward cards? The feeling of how much your hands hurt after writing essays? Do you remember how it felt like? Do you remember the uncomfortable hard work tests? Remember all of that? Let me ask you, do you remember a student, maybe a classmate of yours, maybe he was with you, who knew every answer to every question ever? Do you guys know if you remember there was no other students? I do. I remember. Think of Jennifer. She was obnoxious as well. When the teacher would ask us questions, she would practically fall out of her seat, waving her hand. She was so excited. None of us had a chance to even think that she could be it. Well, today, in the Gospel reading, we see not one, but two sets of people who were those know-it-all students. Today, St. John tells us that Jesus passed by and saw a man blind since birth, and he felt compassion, and he healed him. He spit with the blood, gave him clay, and anointed his eyes, told him to wash his eyes, and he received his sight. He received his sight. Not just physical sight, but a spiritual sight. He was a ruler, he was a light. Well, his family, his friends, his neighbors, the Pharisees, the disciples, none of them could explain how this happened. Even though they all thought they were pretty smart, even though they all thought they knew who this man was, and they knew who Christ was. They couldn't explain it. That didn't stop them from trying. The first group were Christ's disciples. When they saw the blind man, they didn't ask any questions about Christ, what he can do, how he can heal him. They said, Christ, Master, Rabbi, whose sin was it that this man was born? They assumed that it was someone's fault. They assumed that someone was to blame for him being born. They didn't bother to ask anything else. They jumped to conclusions that this man must have been a sinner, or his parents must have been sinners for him to be born. There are answered questions that haven't even asked, like Jennifer. They lost sight of the real lesson. The insurmountable glory of God is defeated by nothing, can overcome everything. There is no damage to what God can do. Christ explained to them that this man and his parents were not to blame for his blindness, but that his blindness would serve as an opportunity for others God's will. The second group of misled students were the Pharisees. While their eyes were open, their hearts were closed. They said, here's from the scriptures, and they became experts in the matters of the laws and regulations of the Jewish people. But when they saw the blind man killed, they couldn't move themselves to praise God. Instead, they condemned him for doing it on the Sabbath. They blamed him for breaking their laws, the laws of men. Because the Pharisees were busy focusing on the laws of men, they failed that a student or a disciple must possess is humility. Humility. If you enroll into a university thinking that you don't know answers, if you go to class thinking, I'm going to show the teacher a thing or two, you're never going to learn anything, and you will have wasted your tuition. A true student needs to come to their teacher empty, without, so that they can receive, ready to receive and understand, and that wisdom. They need to lay their egos aside, like the blind man. The blind man is not cursed by sin. Instead, he was blessed with humility. He was blessed to not have eyes that trick him, or not to have a heart that betrayed him. He had nothing, and because of that, he had no ego. He was able to receive instruction. Because of that, he was able to ask simply the right question: Lord, who is this Son of Man, that I may believe in him? And because of his humility, he was able to put his lessons into practice and worship them. May we all be mindful of our Master's instruction, counsel, and teachings, and not lose sight of his wisdom. And may the Lord grant us the vision of the blind, and his humility to glorify him in truth and honor. God bless you now, to the age of God. At this time, we will now be studying